All right, good evening, everybody. How's it going? I am Ian Douglas. I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and this is part of my all right, good evening,
regular
everybody. How's it
stream.
going? Get that over there so I don't hear myself. Cool. Hope everybody's doing good. Got a couple of viewers already. Tonight's going to be all about cover letters. I was on the Jonan show, just kind of lurking in their chat. I wasn't on the show. Great group of people, by the way. Go check out the Jonan show. Happens on Wednesdays. Go subscribe to that. Not right now. Stay here for this. But last night they had some people drop questions around cover letters, and I've had other questions kind of throughout the week around cover letters too. So I'm like, maybe I should talk about cover letters tonight. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to show you how I would write a custom cover letter for a given role. So if you're hanging out in chat, drop a hello, let me know that you're there. If you've got questions kind of throughout the evening as we go, specific to cover letters, drop those in. You can find my contact info on the website at techinterview.guide. If you have unrelated questions, you can still ask them in chat. I may not get to them because tonight I just want to focus on cover letters. So we're going to spend about an hour. I'm going to go find some random job and show you how I would write up a cover letter for that. And we'll go from there. Tedorowski, thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Hope you're doing well. All right, well, let's turn this microphone down a tiny bit, and we'll go from there. Yeah, let me know if the audio sounds okay, if the music levels and stuff are going okay. Something happened with my intro music. The intro music didn't play. I'm not sure what's going on, so I got some weird audio stuff to work out. But all right, let's dive in. Let's get to it. I'm going to turn that down just a tiny bit more, I think. There we go. All right. So the whole idea of cover letters, are cover letters even important? That's a good question to kind of get things started. Like, how important are cover letters? Between like 2015 and 2020, I had seen some research that said only about 30 to 35% of hiring managers and recruiters even read a cover letter. So for a lot of people, they're like, well, that's like 2/3 of a chance that I'm just wasting my time writing a cover letter. So why am I going to waste my time if no one's even going to read it? And my counter argument to that is like, but for the third of the jobs that do want to read your cover letter, do you really want to disappoint them and lose out on a third of the jobs because you didn't bother writing a cover letter? So in all of my coaching, when I was teaching at Turing, I always told students, like, no, please take the time, write a cover letter. It's worth it. Because you never know who's going to read it. Well, it turns out that someone did a bunch of research during 2020 with a pandemic and how people were kind of slowing their hiring practices and kind of reevaluating what it meant to do hiring in a now mostly remote kind of industry. And it turns out that closer to 80% of hiring managers and recruiters are now reading cover letters. So it's worth taking the time if you know that like 8 out of 10 people that are viewing your application are actually going to take the time to read your cover letter. Now, that doesn't mean that the cover letter has to be like a full biography of who you are and every little thing that you do. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite tips tonight on how to craft a cover letter. And then we can kind of use this as a guide for how we're going to write our future cover letters. And so we're going to get started with that. As with most like resume reviews and cover letter reviews and things like that I might do on the stream, I'm going to basically give you sort of an intro caveat on kind of all this advice over the course of the evening as well, and give you one of my favorite quotes. It says, opinions are like armpits. Everybody generally has a couple, and some of them stink. And you can put my name next to that as a quote. So yeah, so hopefully the font size is going to be okay for this. Might bump that up a tiny bit more. Let's try that. So yeah, we're basically like taking all of this with a grain of salt. Never ever just listen to me. Never ever just listen to like one other person at your school or one other person in your HR department. You should be listening to opinions and thoughts and ideas from lots and lots of different people. That's the only way that you're going to be able to form your own opinion. So don't write a cover letter the way I tell you to write a cover letter, and that's the only way you're ever going to write a cover letter. The cover letter is going to be a creative expression of who you are and some points that you want to get across to the company. But that doesn't mean that my way of writing a cover letter is like a surefire way to get an interview or a surefire way to win them over. I think I got some good ideas because I've read plenty of these and I've written plenty of these over the years. But don't ever just listen to one person's opinion. I'm a big fan, especially on the stream, of perspective. That's why I have lots of people on the show. Next week, we're going to have a ton of people on the show. I've got like 4 people lined up. I'm trying to get like 6 to basically just talk about questions that you should ask at an interview. I know that I've covered that a ton in all my Q&A sessions. Well, I finally got around to organizing it. And so yeah, so that's going to be next week. And so don't ever listen to just one perspective. That's why I like having people on the stream, because you get to hear ideas from different people, especially when I do resume reviews on the stream, for example. We kind of banter back and forth a little bit about whether karate belongs on a resume. If you go back and watch the very first stream when I had Jonan on the stream, he and I had a ton of fun just going back and forth on like, do you even put like skills or hobbies or interesting things about you on a resume? Does it belong there or not? And he's a firm believer that, yeah, that kind of stuff absolutely belongs on there. Me, I'm like, well, if you're applying for a job with a company that has to deal with that, then yeah, by all means, put karate on the old resume there. Powerhouse of Cell. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Cool. Well, let's dive in. So I just wanted to start with that little caveat. Opinions are like armpits. Everybody's generally got a couple. Some of them stink. There is a less family-friendly version of that quote, but I'm going to go with this one. So what I want to do is I want to go find just some random job post. Drop in the chat. Should I look at LinkedIn, Indeed, other source? Like, where should I go find a job? By the way, I'm not looking for a job. I'm just showing you how I would write a cover letter for a job. I'm not looking for work. Hi to Dev. Thanks for the follow as well. This is great. All kinds of people showing up tonight, hanging out on chat. Drop a hello in chat. Let me know where you're from. And like I said when I started out the stream, definitely drop questions in there. If you got questions about cover letters or comments about cover letters, absolutely put them in the chat. I will address as many as I can while I'm going through this. But let me know in chat. Should I look at like Indeed, LinkedIn, angel.co, builtin.com? Like, where should I go look for a job? And then I'm just going to find a job that I think is kind of like, appealing to the skills and so on that I have, because, you want to try to find a job that relates to the skills that you have. But I want to show you how I would then write up a cover letter and use that. So drop in chat for me. Powerhouse of Cell says, hey, Ian, thanks for doing this. Saw you in the Turing Slack. Glad I got to make it. I'm glad you got to make it too. It's good hanging out on the stream for sure. So thanks for hanging out. LinkedIn, someone said LinkedIn. All right, well, let's go over to LinkedIn and let's see if I can find a job over there. So let's go to linkedin.com. Helps if you spell it right, linkedin.com. And let's see, there's usually a jobs thing up here. Jobs, we'll close all this stuff down. For anybody that glanced at that, I'm going to be on Martin McGovern's podcast next week. So we're like arranging times to chat about that stuff. All right, so let's look for jobs in here. Let's see. Let's just look for like a senior kind of level role. Lots of stuff recommended to me as a director. I don't want to apply, like, I don't want to like fake apply for like another director job. So let's try to find like a senior engineer type of role. Suggest a job, search. So here we go. Search by, they don't make it really easy to find that. All right, so let's go look for like a senior developer kind of role. And let's see, job type. Yeah, let's look for a remote job. And let's look for like Python. All right, backend engineer with Pepper, Plexus, Global, Fast, Capacity, all these interesting names of companies I've never heard of. Org3D, Zillow, I know Zillow. Principal backend, nah, I don't want a principal job. We got Hopper, we got Front, Austin Fraser, another Synergy, Class Dojo, Brooksource. I've heard of Brooksource, and they're here in Denver. So let's go take a look at that. One thing that I really love is Colorado posted or passed a law that any job post in Colorado now has to include salary information. And these folks are pretty awesome about saying, hey, $60 to $73 an hour. So if we multiply that by 2, that's going to give us approximately our salary in thousands of dollars. And so if you take the hourly rate and you multiply by 2,080, that's how many work hours there are. So I just say, just multiply by 2, add 3 zeros. That's roughly what your range is going to be. So their range is like 120 to 135-ish thousand a year. It's a pretty good range for a senior role. All right, let's see. Oh, Ted had me as a Mod 1 instructor. That's awesome. Trying to remember what your last name might be. Don't give it away in chat, but I'll noodle on that over the course of the evening. All right, so this is the job we're going to apply to. There is an easy apply. I could go in and they'll just scrape my LinkedIn. But what I want to do is I want to basically look at all of the job information here, and I'm going to show you how I would craft a cover letter for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump up the font size over here. Maybe not quite that much. Is there a way to collapse that side? I don't know that there is. So let's do this because zooming is not working well. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start another Google Doc over here, and this will just be the job post. That way I can kind of zoom in on this and kind of look at it as we go. We'll do like a font size of 12 just so we can kind of see what's going on here. All right, so let's have a look through this. Position summary, seeking well-poised. Ooh, poised. They're looking for poise in this job. That's a new one. And optimistic. Well, sorry, pessimists, you can't apply for this job. Software engineering professional with a proven track record of successful software contributions. Candidate must exhibit strong team collaboration skills with a bias towards self-promotion. This is basically like toot your own horn. So they're looking for people that are kind of like self-ambitious, but also willing to sort of brag on themselves a little bit. To me, that starts to set a flag in my mind of like, oh, they don't pay attention to what you do, so you better tell them. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but we'll take a look kind of as we go through this. So the first thing we got to do, of course, is read through some of this. I'm just going to kind of skim through it a little bit. Open mind, a great deal of academic understanding of object-oriented design, domain-driven design, and a desire for continuous learning and continuous improvement. So far, I'm hitting on a lot of these. Essential functions, remain fully engaged with your Agile development team, participate at a high standard of inclusion and ethic in support of each member of your team. So play nicely with others. Create clean, maintainable, scalable, and well-tested code. I can do that. Contribute architectural decisions that bring out best-of-breed solutions. Best of breed sounds weird. I mean, I have a purebred dog. So best of breed sounds a little weird when it comes to thinking about software. Whoever wrote this has got some pretty clever wordsmithing going on. Actively participate in Agile ceremonies. So they're probably big into like Scrum, backlog grooming, what else? Like retrospectives, yeah, sprint planning, all that kind of stuff. Design meetings, organizational events. Interesting. I'm kind of curious what organizational events would be, unless that's just organizing like the projects you're working on and so on. Work with engineers, product, business stakeholders throughout the org. Help translate business requirements and tech specs. So this is basically, you're going to be the liaison between the business side of the business and the technical side of the business to basically help translate like, hey, we need something that does such and such. And you're going to take that back to the engineering team and say, this is what we need to go build. So as a senior level dev, you're going to have some flexibility and some leeway, but also some responsibility to know how you want to go build this thing. So these are the kinds of things that you'll take into account for this. Research and evaluate methods and techniques to solve problems, reduce friction in full development lifecycle. So this is something that we call SDLC, or Software Development Lifecycle. Adherence to standards and best practices around development process, code, peer reviews. Yep. Support tech service team to resolve customer problems. Okay. Maintain quality standards, ensure responsiveness of applications. So this is basically like, help us out. Like if something crashes, like you're going to help take care of it. You know, that things are going to get like maybe well tested before they go to production and so on. Ensure the responsiveness. That's just like take care of uptime. Make sure that if we get this thing online, it's going to stay online. It's not going to like, you know, go down every night at like 2 a.m. and, you know, someone's got to wake up and restart the app every night. Diagnose and resolve problems both independently and as a team. Okay. Ensure documentation app artifacts conform to standards of the org. Okay, so they've got their own sort of way of doing things, and they want to make sure that you're on board with doing it their way. That can be a big important thing to realize about a company as you're applying for a job, is like they have a set sort of standard of how they want to build something, and you need to do it that way. They don't want people to come in and just like start YOLOing and doing it their own way. Present product demos to IT management, product stakeholders. So again, that's part of the agile sort of process, is having like some kind of demo. Strive to build consensus rather than independent solutions that drive better outcomes. So they're basically looking for, again, like take care of the team. And as a team, you're going to decide and sort of collaborate on how you want to build things together. It's not like one person in charge. But you are going to lead the team in technical aspects, doing reviews and enforcing standards. Interesting that one thing that's not essential in here is something like security. So making sure that your code is secure and so on, that would be nice to see in there. But qualifications, competencies, analytical skills, communication. So oral communication, written communication, customer oriented. So keep the customer in mind as you're building things. We talk a lot about that in like user experience and so on, but also just like when I build an app, I build it with, particular users in mind. I may be the first user of what I build, but I'm not the only user of what I build. For those joining, I just noticed a whole bunch of people join the chat. So I'm looking through a job post from LinkedIn, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to write a cover letter for this. So I'm just kind of browsing through and scanning through it real quick so that I've got ideas for what I want to go build as the cover letter for this. Decision making, interpersonal skills, problem solving. So ability to get along with a variety of personalities. That's always fun. I've worked with some personalities. Problem solving, ability to find a solution for or deal proactively with work-related problems. So when they talk about dealing with things proactively, you can react to problems or you can proactively prevent the problems. So they're basically saying like, look, you either need to find a fix or you need to be able to not have a problem in the first place. So thinking about those things kind of ahead of time as part of your design strategies and so on. Relationship building, ability to effectively build relationships with customers and coworkers. So this is sounding like there's a lot of customer interaction in here. Education, bachelor's degree or equivalent experience in computer science, IT, business info systems, or related field. So I like that they include all of this. A bachelor's degree is not required, which is awesome because I don't have a bachelor's degree. I've been in the industry 25 years, working very successfully. Don't have to have a bachelor's degree to do a lot of this stuff. But if you're getting into like scalability and optimizations, like those kinds of things can help. But they're willing to say like, hey, like any kind of background, any kind of experience that you bring to the team is awesome. So bring it. Skills, 5 to 8 years. So they're looking for a senior level role, 5 to 8 years working as a full stack software engineer. So keep in mind, full stack is going to be both back end, front end, maybe middleware, depending on what they've got going on. Building enterprise level applications. So enterprise is just a fancy term for it's got to be really robust, and it's going to have lots of moving parts and maybe lots of components that all communicate with each other. May or may not mean microservices, but that's going to be something that I might highlight in here. 5+ years overall of software engineering experience. Yep. Working with Django. I've done some things with Django, a little rusty in Django, but they want hands-on experience working in Django. Rock solid at working with third-party dependencies and debugging dependency conflicts. That's not really a skill I enjoy exercising. I can, but I'm actually not going to talk about that in my cover letter because it's not a strength that I want to be like, hey, this is why you need to hire me. But when we write up that cover letter, we do want to point out like, hey, these are things that qualify you for the job, and these are skills that you must have. So these are the kinds of things that we want to talk about in the cover letter. And I'm going to kind of like give you that framework here in a sec. So we're almost done working through this. Understanding REST APIs, done plenty of that. Lots of API building, creating, optimizing, integrating. Yep. Background in API development. Yep. Hands-on in Python, plenty of Python. Lots of Git or Subversion, done lots of those. Cloud development and architecture, particularly AWS and infrastructure as code. Yeah, but this starts to feel like it's kind of moving away a little bit from like what they consider a full stack software engineer. This is like starting to play into the DevOps realm of things. Because really as a developer, like, am I really responsible for deploying my own code and like maintaining servers and cloud infrastructure and so on. But anyway, we'll get into that. Knowledge of release management, CI/CD. Yep. Hey, there's the software development lifecycle that we talked about. Proven knowledge of an RDBMS or relational database management system like MySQL, Postgres, things like that, and NoSQL. So it's interesting that they don't specifically name which database they use. They just want to know that you've got database experience. So the nice thing about this then is if you don't have, like, if they say we're looking for MySQL and you don't have MySQL, you're like, well, shoot, all I have is Postgres. So do I qualify? Should I apply for the job? Yeah, apply for the job anyway. They're really similar. So in this case, they're just saying like, hey, we would really like you to have these things. Now, when I write a job post, I always start with like the most important things, and the stuff towards the bottom are like, yeah, these would be really nice to have. I kind of wish that more job posts would actually break it up. Like, these are things you must have, and these would be nice to have. Like, this is like icing on the cake. But like the cake is like Python, Django, REST API development. But the icing on the cake, it would be really cool if you knew both SQL and NoSQL. Proven understanding of TDD. Those that know me from Turing know I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for test-driven development. It's a really, really big spot in my heart for TDD. Concepts and design patterns. So I'm basically going to highlight like, hey, I taught this stuff for 4 years. So yeah, go ahead and quiz me on it. Messaging technologies such as simple query service, I believe, or RabbitMQ. So this is like a pub sub kind of thing. I've used different pub sub tools. It's been a minute since I've used RabbitMQ. And then caching, such as Redis and Elasticsearch. I've used all these. Experience in leading teams. Yep, been there, done that. And then the work environment. Noise level is usually moderate. That's good to know. And they did say in the job post that they were based in Denver, but they were willing to consider remote. Reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities. Yep. And then entire work time is conducted in an office environment in a controlled atmosphere building. But they did say it was a remote job. So which is it? Because they're kind of highlighting like, hey, we have a controlled atmosphere in our building. So like really good air filtration. Like, what is a controlled atmosphere? But okay, I think I got the gist of what we need to see here for the cover letter. So let's go back and let's start framing out the cover letter. So we want to generally start this like a typical business letter where I might have like my address at the top and then a date and then like some sort of salutation. So I'm going to skip some of that and just say, all right, in here, we're going to put in, we're going to need a date. We're going to need a salutation. And then I like to go with a 3-paragraph cover letter. And so I'm going to have like, what do they call it at the end, where you like sign off and sign your name. I'll just say signature for now. So I like a 3-paragraph format. That 3-paragraph is going to look like this. The first paragraph is going to be, let's just start out with kind of bullet points. So first paragraph is going to be the role to which you are applying, how you heard about the role, and then like something like you need a hook in here. You need something to really grab their attention. So we need like a hook or a grab or something to like convince them like, hey, you need to keep reading this thing. Now, when it comes to cover letters, it's a little bit like resumes where there's, they say like, oh, the average person looks at your resume for like 6 to 10 seconds. It can be a little bit similar with your cover letter. So you don't want like wall to wall, top to bottom text. Like you don't want it to be pages and pages and pages. That's why I like 3 paragraphs and they're relatively short. But you need something to really grab their attention in here about like why they should continue reading it, because by the end of that letter, you're convincing them why they should call you. The second paragraph, this is going to be the skills you have that match what they're looking for. And where possible, mention projects and specific skills that are important to you. Now, this is the key thing here. These are things that are important to you, not necessarily to them. because you're already telling them the skills that you have that they're looking for according to that job post. But you also want to point out the projects and skills that you deeply care about. Like, these are things that, like, you must know this about me. I like to sort of frame that out in the second paragraph. And then the third paragraph, I don't know what just happened with my margins in here. Third paragraph is basically going to be closing it out. And in the closing, you basically want to tell them, like, why you're aligned with their business. And you want a very hard call to action. If there are any Carly Rae Jepsen fans in the chat, what this means is we don't want a call me maybe scenario. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there. So this is basically the framework that we're going to follow. Someone asked in chat, is it common for a company to mention the noise level? I mean, it depends a little bit on the company. I've been at companies, for example, Stream, where I work right now. When I first started at the company the first time years ago, and then I quit. I went to Turing for 4 years, and I went back to Stream. They bought everybody like Bose headphones, and I'm still rocking those Bose headphones. They're amazing, but they're also noise canceling. It's like, what are you trying to tell me about the work environment here that you're buying me noise canceling headphones? Not just headphones, but active noise canceling headphones. And turns out the floors are just super squeaky, and you know, being in a small startup, there tends to be a lot more chatter kind of going on. It's not really common, but I think because companies are trying to draw people back to the office, they want to be more aware of your needs as an employee, of like what's going to be important to you. So as we're doing company research and things like that, we want to find out, like, what is it about the company that we're going to like or not like. So for example, if they had listed in that job post, like, hey, we're a pet friendly office, and I've got like allergies to dogs, I'm probably not even going to apply for the job unless I specifically write in the cover letter, like, you know, due to, like, you know, personal concerns, you know, I'm not willing to work in an office that has, you know, animals. And so, you know, I would be applying for a remote only position kind of thing. Or that might be something that you bring up on the phone screen. It may not immediately disqualify you and say, well, you can't work here because you don't like dogs. But it's something that you need to be aware of as a potential candidate, of like, what is their office environment going to be? So whether it's noise, or just, you know, that they've upgraded their air circulation for COVID or whatever, these are all considerations that you're going to need to make. So this is a structure that we're going to follow as we write this thing out. So let's get to it. So we're going to start with the date, and today's date is September 9th. So September 9th, 2021. Salutation. To whom it may concern is never a good idea. I forget now what this company was, so I need to go back to LinkedIn. Brooks Source. So the nice thing here is it tells us who it was posted by. So professional government recruiter at Brooks Source. So we can click directly on their name, but I'm also going to go look at Brooks Source as well. As much as possible, you want to try to find a name to address this to. Now, just because Amanda Austin posted this job doesn't necessarily mean she or they are going to be the one to read that cover letter. So it may behoove you to, like, go take a look at their profile, go take a look at their company, and see what's going on. Now, they've been at Brooks Source for 2 years, and they've had various roles in recruiting. They've kind of gone from recruiter to senior recruiter to professional recruiter. These titles are a bit confusing. What's the difference between a senior recruiter and a professional recruiter? Don't know. Also worked at Target. They're a recruiting coordinator. So they've done lots and lots of recruiting over the years. But I want to go check out Brooks Source as a company. So over here, they got 1,500 employees. I'm going to go click on that. Now, one thing that I noticed, 1,500 employees, and it doesn't list anything under here that says, I know anybody that works there. And that can be an important distinction. Because if you know somebody there, it'd be a really good idea to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm applying for this job. Is it cool if I, like, drop your name in my cover letter to say that we've talked about it? So learn more about Brooks Source. Let's go learn a little bit more about them. because the other thing that's important is what is their company culture? Because we want to make sure that their company culture aligns with what we want to work in as a developer ourselves. Sales, recruiting, community. Okay, so that's not going to help us. National Services Center. Doesn't give us anything but a new cool little graphic. Calculated hire. So it looks like they've got offices all over the place, which is kind of interesting. So IT services makes me wonder if it's like a consultancy kind of company. Because yeah, that about learn more about Brooksource doesn't give us any new information than what the other tabs did. So this is why you got to go do your own research on a company. So let's go look at about. Our business is people. Relationships are at the center of everything we do. Successful partnership is only as strong as the relationship built. So these are the kinds of things that you want to talk about in the cover letter. You want them to go, hey, that sounds like us. You know, our business is people. Relationships are at the center of everything we do. So I'm going to like drop some of these phrases in my cover letter as we go. Successful partnership is only as strong as the relationship built. We're your trusted partner for delivering on technology initiatives through experience-driven staffing. So they're a staffing firm, basically. So something that we call staff augmentation. So you become an employee of Brooksource, and then you get hired out or rented out to other companies that need help working on a project. So 1,500 employees are based in Indiana, privately held. They've been around for 20 years, and they got locations all over the states. Cool. All right. So knowing that they are a staffing firm, I'm also going to now frame a little bit more about my cover letter as well to talk about like consultancy work that I've done and you know, project switching and things like that. Because in a staffing firm like this, you could get moved from project to project on a fairly regular basis. There's one very well-known group called Pivotal Labs, for example. They switch their projects every 4 to 6 months. So if you get hired at Pivotal Labs, you become an employee of Pivotal. But when they put you on a project, you're only going to be there 4 to 6 months, and they're going to rotate you off and work on something else, partly to save on burnout, but partly also to keep fresh eyes on the project. So if the engagement goes longer than that 4 to 6 months, they've got fresh eyeballs on it all the time. So someone dropped in chat. I see that quite often. What are your thoughts on them? On Pivotal Labs? I really like Pivotal. I've got a ton of respect for folks at Pivotal Labs. We had an extra long engagement with them when I worked at SendGrid, and they are very quality people for sure. If you ever want an introduction to folks at Pivotal, drop me a line on LinkedIn, and I'll make some introductions. They got really good people over there. All right, so as far as a salutation goes, do we address it to Amanda Austin, or do we try to find someone else? So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to look at the people and search employees by title. I'm going to look for recruiter. And again, just because they posted the job doesn't mean that they're the one to address the cover letter to, but it's probably going to be okay if we address it to them. But if you're finding the job somewhere else, so let's say we found this job on like Indeed or some other site, and it didn't have that name readily available to know who to send this to or who to address it to. What we need to do is we need to go in here and we need to actually like narrow this down a little bit. So I'm going to click on the employee list so I get this view. And I'm going to go into all filters. And then I'm going to look for something under title, and I'm going to look for something like recruiter in their title. Show the results. So we got lots of technical recruiters, professional recruiters, senior technical recruiter, professional, senior tech recruiter. What I'm looking for is like who's like the top of the food chain. So in the order for building out the salutation, we want like some sort of like senior HR person, and then like just an HR like recruiter person. Next up would be a VP of engineering. And then under that would probably be like an engineering manager. This is kind of the hierarchy of who's in charge of people on that engineering team. So, you know, any senior level person in HR is appropriate to address it to. If you can't find like a senior level or like VP of people or VP of people ops or something along those lines, just find anybody in HR. Excuse me. My recommendation though is always find a name. You always want to try to find a name. Worst case scenario, if you're doing network and outreach to the company ahead of time before we spot this job, like let's say I've already been talking to somebody and they're like, hey, we posted this job. I'm going to go in and take a look at this. Reach out to the person that you've been networking with and say, hey, who do I address a cover letter to? Who would be appropriate for that role? They may give you the name of an engineering manager. They may give you a name of someone in HR, but this is kind of the hierarchy that you want to follow. So start with a senior level HR person, then just HR recruiter. VP of engineering is in charge of people on the engineering team, not the CTO. If they're now, the exception with addressing this to a CEO, only address to a CTO if they're a startup. As a startup, the CTO is basically just their lead engineer. That's all CTO title really means in startup land. But once they get big enough, they start hiring a VP of engineering, and that VP of engineering is in charge of the people. The CTO is in charge of the technology and in charge of the projects and in charge of like how we build what we build. But the VP of engineering is in charge of the people. And so the next one kind of in line would then be a VP of engineering. If they don't have a VP of engineering, you could consider the CTO, or you could just find any other engineering manager at that point. But if you start getting really stuck on who to address a cover letter to, you got to reach out to someone at the company and say, hey, I want to apply for this job. Who would I address that cover letter to? So let's see. So we got a lot of senior recruiter, and then we've got like just technical recruiters. Staffing firms are going to have like tons of recruiting people because they're going to have a constant churn of people. And so they've got people all over the country because they have offices all over the country. And so they're going to have specific people, like they'll have like a Denver specific recruiter, which might be Amanda, actually, if I go back and look at, no, they're in Louisville. Well, Louisville or Louisville, Colorado. It's probably Louisville, Kentucky. So we're going to keep looking. Senior recruiter, professional recruiter, professional recruiter. All right. So not seeing anything that really jumps out. And usually by like page 4, page 5 of results, you're going to see somebody kind of drift up to the top. The fact that I'm not really seeing like this person appears to be in charge of all of the recruiters, I'm just going to go ahead and address it to Amanda. Now, you don't want to be too friendly and like, hey, Amanda, what's up? Some people will say like, hey, be friendly. If Amanda's reading this letter and you start with, hey, Amanda, what's going on? Then, it starts off on that friendly tone. I like to keep it professional. And because I don't know, like, sort of where they're at in life, are they married or not? I'm just going to say like, dear Ms. Well, and this can be problematic in with like pronouns and like preferred pronouns and things like that for people too. I don't want to assume anything. That's why I stopped using she, her pronouns when I was talking about Amanda, and I started using they. It's kind of a more generic term. So yeah, I don't want to presume anything. So I'm going to change this up and just say to Amanda Austin instead of dear. Not dead. I didn't mean to write dead. I meant to write dear Miss. So we're going to say to Amanda Austin. So that's our salutation. Taken care of. All right. So in that first paragraph, I want to mention the role I'm applying to, why I'm applying, how I heard about it, and then some kind of hook or grab that's going to make this person want to continue to reading this letter. So let's go in and take another look at that. So I'm applying for, was it the senior Python developer role with BrookSource in the Denver office. My name is Ian Douglas. My name is William Douglas. I go by Ian, or my friends call me Ian. For those on the stream that wonder, legally I am William Douglas. Ian is my middle name. And I am applying for the senior Python developer role at BrookSource in Denver. I've got an extensive background in project rotation and development lifecycle. and have several years of freelance experience. These qualities make me a great candidate or a great fit for this role at Source. So we're grabbing their attention right away. Project rotation, development lifecycle, several years of freelance experience. These qualities and my 25 years as a professional developer So the reason that I mentioned the word professional developer in here is because, I started coding like way back in the 1980s, but none of that really counts because that wasn't professional experience. So we do need to be a little bit careful about how we write these things up. But that's going to be kind of my hook of like, hey, I got a buttload of experience here. I've done freelance work. I've done project rotation. I've worked in software development lifecycle. Like I've done all of this stuff. Make me a great fit. So now we're going to talk about what skills do I have that they were specifically looking for. So in their job post, there was a whole bunch of stuff. I'm actually going to close these up and go back to this here. So let's go through and kind of highlight what I want to talk about. So candidate must exhibit strong team collaboration, bias towards self-promotion. Okay. Proven track record of successful software contributions. Ideal candidates will bring an open mind, great deal of academic understanding of, so academic understanding. So I'm going to talk about like I've got experience teaching. That kind of stuff is also really helpful to staff augmentation firms because if they hire someone like me with a teaching background, they're going to know, hey, if we pair Ian up with a junior or intermediate level dev, he's going to help teach them these things if they've got gaps in their knowledge. So again, doesn't make me a shoe-in for the job, but I'm gonna point it out. In my development experience, in my work experience, I've been a full stack developer, software development teacher for 4 years. I already mentioned my consultancy work, so I don't want to repeat that. Let's see. I've also been a software development teacher for 4 years, teaching the basics of object-oriented design, object-oriented programming, and SDLC. So I'm using the terminology, or I'm using like the short form words on here, partly as a keyword hit, but also because they're using like SDLC and OOP and things like that in their own job post. So it'll kind of like hit on those things. Now they are saying like OO concepts and design patterns. So I do want to mention design patterns in here as well. So design patterns are things like model view controller or like service design patterns, factory design patterns. There's like dozens and dozens of these design patterns. And SDLC. I've worked in Python for over a decade in professional and personal projects, and happy to say all of them include TDD over the past decade. Or some other things that they mentioned in here that I said I was going to point out. So essential functions. So they're looking for agile, participate in high standards. So I've talked about well-tested code. I'm going to talk about like being an architect. I've held senior architect roles, dealt with scalability. And what was the other one I mentioned? Oh yeah, and deeply appreciate agile methodologies. Now I'm using capital A agile, not lowercase agile like they did. because I've actually had Agile training and I understand like the deep implications of what capital A Agile is really all about. It's more than just like daily stand-ups. There's like a whole thing to it. Now, whether that means anything to them, the fact that I've capitalized that A, they may not get it, but that's fine. Reduce friction, adherence to standards. I've kind of covered a lot of that. Customer problems. So they did mention in the job post quite a bit that they're looking for someone to kind of interface with customers. So again, because it's a staffing firm, I'm going to be interfacing with their clients, who are the business people on the other side that are looking to hire or rent me as a developer. And so part of that is going to be listening to what they want to build, and then like figuring out how do we sort of organize that as a team. I've had extensive work interfacing with customers and clients of all technical skill levels, and pride myself on solid communication efforts. Do I mention my live streaming? I don't think I'll mention my live streaming on there. If they ever look me up on LinkedIn, they would see it. Cool. So I'm kind of like hitting on the main things, again, that are important to me. Like, these are things that I want them to know about me. Like, I deeply care about Agile. I deeply care about TDD. I've been a teacher. I've worked in Python a lot. I haven't worked in Django very much, so I didn't specifically mention Django in here. So I work in Python and personal projects. Teaching the basics of all of these things: design pattern, API development, and SDLC. So I want to make sure that I get API development in there too. So again, keyword hits, but they're going to look at that and go, yeah, these are all the like the main things that we were looking for. And then the third thing here is like, why am I aligned with their business? Like why am I on the same sort of path that they are? And what's that hard call to action going to sound like or look like? In my work experience, comma, love Grammarly for reminding me of those kinds of things. All right, so why am I aligned with their business? What I want to do here is I want to basically outline, I've helped people on projects. I've been a consultant. I've done this kind of work before. So you and I, we're headed in the same direction. We've done a lot of this kind of stuff. So I can say I bring a high level of expertise to the job in consulting and development practices. Book source would be a tremendous fit in the direction of my career. So again, this is where I'm telling them, like, you and I are both headed in the same direction, so let's make this happen. Book source would be a tremendous fit for the direction of my career. I have full management experience as a lead developer, as well as other management and director experience. All right, so now we need to work on this hard call to action. So with the whole call me maybe kind of thing that I kind of joked about earlier, I've seen a lot of cover letters that end with like, I look forward to your call, or call me at your convenience. And it's kind of a weak close, to be honest. We want to be like really impactful, like, you need to call me. You need to pick up the phone right now. You need to call me. Not in those words, but we need to be very direct, and we need to make it a hard sell, and we need to make it a very direct call to action. That's what we call it. It's a call to action. So we're calling them to action. So what I'm going to do here to close this off, I'm actually going to make just a single sentence here. Instead of including it as part of the third paragraph, I'm just going to close with this. You can reach me any day, Monday to Friday, during working hours. But this is already kind of sounding a little bit soft. Like, I'm not saying call me on these dates or times. Here's the thing. humans, our psychology, we suffer a lot from what we call FOMO, or feeling of missing out. And so if we give them a very small window of opportunity to contact us, they're more likely to contact us. Some companies, though, they're going to be like, well, if you're only available on Tuesdays between 2 and 3, if there's a full moon, no, I'm not going to call. I'm not even going to bother to check whether next Tuesday is a full moon. I'm just not going to call if you're being like hyper specific. But you do want to kind of like give them a sort of a small range. And you can say something like, I'm actively interviewing and available. By the way, if my boss is watching, I'm not actively interviewing. I'm not applying for a job. Like, you got me full time at Stream. It's good. It's all good. Not applying for a job. I'm just showing people how to write a cover letter. Actively interviewing and available. Let's change this up. So I'm actively interviewing and can be reached any afternoon this week by phone or email. So again, what this is doing is it's saying like, you need to call me this week. Now, if I send this out tomorrow, it's Friday and this week ends today or on that day. They may not even read this thing for another week. And the fact that I've got a date at the top of the letter, they're going to look at that and go, oh, you were only available that week back on the 9th, like, meh. So you do want to be a little bit flexible. So if I were going to actually send this in, I might send it on a Monday and say, I'm available all this week for a phone call. So again, you want to give a bit of a shortened time window where it's not this like, yeah, you know, I look forward to hearing from you someday, maybe, if you feel like it. Like, you want to be really direct and be like, you need to call me between these days and these hours. Like, just be really specific about it. Just say, I want a phone call. Not in, like, you don't want to literally say, I want a phone call. But we need it to be a hard sell. We need to close in a strong way that sounds, I'm confident that this is going to be a great fit. You need to pick up the phone and give me a call. And by using language like I'm actively interviewing, they're going to look at that and go, oh, you're interviewing. So if we want to move on this, like, we're going to have to hurry this up. I need to call you sooner than later, because if you're actively interviewing, I may lose out on you as a candidate. So again, it's that whole psychology of feeling like you're going to miss out on something good. And so you want to use language in here that's going to really tug on that for them, to let them know that they need to give you a call. So I'm actively interviewing. I can be reached any afternoon. So I'm not necessarily going to say this week, but I'm available any afternoon. That lets them know, like, okay, well, I probably shouldn't call them in the morning. And so the first thing they're going to do is go, okay, well, what's my next afternoon available to actually call this person? And they're going to be like, oh, I'm free tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to like pencil that in, or, you know, I'm going to email them and say, hey, let's set up a time for tomorrow afternoon. You're more likely to get a response right away if you give them a very specific action to take to reach you. You don't want it to be like a wishy-washy, like, call me maybe. Now, if we were to zoom out on this and look at the overall use of white space on the page, or just, you know, space on the page, it's a very short letter. There's not a lot to this, and it doesn't have to be. Sincerely, Ian Douglas. That's it. There's my cover letter. I've literally had a cover letter one time where I'm like I was a hiring manager for a role, and I specified like, hey, you have to give me a cover letter, you know, explaining, you know, like, I didn't actually say they had to explain something, but I said, hey, I want you to submit a cover letter, and somebody literally wrote like, hire me as their cover letter. And mentally I said, nope, because if you're not going to take the time to write me a cover letter when I specifically asked for one, like, I'm not going to call you. So for those that have joined the call since the start of the stream, so just to recap a little bit, I kind of talked through like a 3-paragraph format, where the first paragraph was like, what's the role? What's the hook? Like, why, like, how am I going to grab your attention to keep reading this letter? The second paragraph is highlighting the skills that are important to me that they have called out specifically in their job post. And the third paragraph is like, why we're headed in the same direction and why it's going to be a really good fit. And so again, you're just kind of summarizing this stuff. And then a really strong call to action here at the bottom that says, you need to call me, like, you need to call me right now, kind of thing. they're more likely to do that because of that psychology of feeling like they're missing out on something. In the chat, what were the most memorable cover letters I've ever run into? Well, the first one was a hire me one, where it was just like, hire me. I'm like, nope. If I specifically asked for a cover letter and that's all you write, then I'm not going to bother. I've had cover letters that were like really, really long that like explain like everything about their life story, which is unnecessary too. A cover letter is just, why should I call you? The resume is meant to be a list of facts of like, do you have the skill that we're looking for this particular role? And the cover letter is like, go ahead, convince me to call you. When I started the stream, I was talking a little bit about statistics. So for those that have joined after the fact, between like 2015 and 2020, some statistics that I read and researched into a little bit said that only about 30 to 35% of people in a hiring decision position, like they were the ones actually making the hiring decision, only 30 to 35% of them would read a cover letter. In 2020, someone else did some research and said that the number was actually closer to 80% because a lot of companies were slowing down their hiring process and being really intentional about who they were going to hire. And so that number has actually ticked up quite a lot. So it's absolutely worth taking the time to write a cover letter. I mean, I wrote this cover letter in less than an hour, based on a job I never knew, a company I never heard anything about, or I'd heard the name, but I didn't really know what they did or who they were. And I was able to write this up and explain it at the same time. I can then actually use this kind of like a template for applying for other jobs. Now, the problem with writing a generic cover letter is it comes across very generic. And if all you're changing is who you're addressing the letter to, then it kind of loses its flavor a little bit. Like it's going to read kind of bland. And so as a hiring manager, I want to know that you're actually like taking the time to research me as a company, researching our culture, researching who we are, what we do, who we serve, that sort of thing. And that you're going to tell me about that in some fashion between the cover letter and the resume. That you're actually like customizing this stuff for me and that you're not just shotgunning the same resume out to like tons and tons of places and the same cover letter that's just very generically worded. And so we can use this as a bit of a template. So on techinterview.guide, I think chapter 9, I talk about resumes, and chapter 8 then I think is all about cover letters. And I need to go back and update some of that because some of it's been out of date. But when I talk about building out the resume, I talk about like build a really long resume and then, as you're applying for a job, you're going to trim it back down to one page. We can't really do that as easily with a cover letter. And so it's not that you have to start the cover letter over from scratch. You can certainly like copy and paste it from another job. So what I might do is, for example, on Google Drive, since I know this is a consultancy staffing firm or staff augmentation firm, I might make a folder just for consultancy jobs. And I'm going to put this cover letter in that folder. So the next time if I wanted to go apply at Pivotal Labs or some other consultancy firm, I'm going to go grab a copy of this letter because this letter is where I'm specifically talking about being a consultant, project rotation and all this kind of stuff, to where they're going to see like I would be a good asset on this team because I can train up other people around me, as well as like write good quality code. And so I'm going to like sort of keep that separate from other types of jobs. So that would be like one key differentiator there is, you can keep all these cover letters and you can, make a copy of them to like edit, to make that cover letter generation process faster for the next job to which you're going to apply. So you don't have to start it from scratch every time. The first one takes a little bit of time to write. Now, for me, this was easy to write because I got tons of experience. I've got tons of background. I've got tons of stuff. I imagine several of you on the call are like, I'm brand new at this. I'm just getting ready to graduate Turing, or I've just finished, a degree program or whatever. I don't have any experience. How would I write a cover letter? It's going to be very similar to this, except this first paragraph, you're going to talk more about the background and the experience that you bring to the team. That's not just technology. Like you can mention here, like I'm a new graduate and I'm applying for this job, but I also bring a background in sales, or I also bring a background in customer service. If you've worked any sort of like customer facing role, like any kind of like restaurant kind of job or anything like that, where you've had to interact with individuals or interact with customers. I mean, it's the same sort of thing here. Like this consultancy job would be just like, I could apply for this if all I had ever done was like food service, right? Maybe I've been like a food server at a restaurant. Well, that's also kind of playing that liaison role between what the customer wants and getting the team in the back in the kitchen to cook what they want, the way that they want. And so like being able to describe to the back of house, as I'm front of house staff, like these are all qualities that you can also talk about in the cover letter about how you've transitioned some of this. So if you don't have all of the skills, that's fine. I didn't have all the skills that this job was looking for, but I do highlight the things that were important to me. And so if we kind of go back and think about the layout that I mentioned, first paragraph is about you and some kind of hook to keep reading. Second paragraph is all the skills that they're looking for that are important to you. So these are things about me that I want them to know. I've been a teacher. I've worked in Python for a decade. I love TDD. I've done architect roles and management type of roles. Like I've got that level of experience. Like that stuff is important to me. That's my identity. That's who I am in this professional setting. And then the third paragraph is like why you're headed in the same direction. Like you do this, I also want to do this. We're a good fit. You should call me. But again, that close has to be a hard sell. It has to be a hard, you need to call me. It's not a call me maybe scenario. We're not Carly Rae Jepsen. We're not a call me maybe kind of crew. We want to be very clear and say, I'm actively interviewing. You can reach me any afternoon. So again, you're kind of shrinking that timeline a little bit, and it'll kick in that feeling of missing out on their part. And you'll be like, oh shoot, they're interviewing now and I can only reach them in the afternoons. That's gonna really drive that psychology to get them to want to call you. So a couple of things in chat. So we'll address some of this. As a career switcher, should I talk about previous career if it isn't tech related? Yeah. So I think I've just talked about that. But how you talk about transitioning those skills is also equally important. Like being able to describe why that background is going to be important to them. Like, what is it about that background? What is it about your other life experience or professional experience that's going to be important to their company? And like, why are you specifically mentioning that as a transition? So I would also mention that in that second paragraph, because those are things about you that are important about you that they need to know as to why you're applying for this job. So yeah, you can absolutely talk about those. SK Sam says, I advocate for writing out cover letters too. Helps me confirm I've done X amount of research on a company before ever hitting interview number one. Yeah, I ran into a few red flags during the process of writing cover letters. Yeah, and that can be really telling. So as you're doing the company research, I've got a YouTube video on that that I'll try to post in the description later when I post this on YouTube. I got a whole thing just on company research. Like, how do you find out different things about the job that are important to you? And as you're finding out that information, you're asking yourself, is this okay? Like, is it okay that I know this? Is it okay that I can't find any information about this? That would be an important thing. So for me, for example, this would be like one thing that I would actually do a little more research on before I would actually apply for this specific job at a consultancy firm. I made myself two promises early in my career. One, I'm never going to wear a tie, period. I'm not comfortable in a tie. I'll wear them to like weddings and date night with my wife and like other like super formal events. Other than that, I'm never going to like button this thing right up to the top and wear a tie. It's not who I am. It's not something that I am comfortable doing day to day. So if these folks, if Brooks Source, if their customer base are super professional, I did see government contracts on there, that might be a consideration for me, because if I have to go work at a government office on their behalf, I'm probably gonna have to wear a jacket and maybe a tie, at the very least a button-down shirt. I can take the jacket off when I get there, and I'm okay in button-down shirts. I mean, clearly I love my flannels, but if I gotta wear a tie every day, I'm gonna hate that job. No matter how much I enjoy the work, no matter how much I enjoy the technology, the fact that I'm strangling myself every day wearing a tie is not something I want to do. The second promise I made myself is who the clientele were going to be. I have deep moral objections to certain kinds of companies, and I'm never going to go work for a company where one of their big customers is like Big Tobacco, for example, just as one example. I've never been a smoker. I watched smoking like slowly kill my dad. I'm not going to work for a company who has Big Tobacco as a client. And so I'm going to do research on a company like this. Like, you're a staffing firm and you hire me out to work at these other companies. I want to know that you're not going to put me on a company where I am morally objected. Otherwise, again, I'm going to hate the job. I'm going to hate life. I'm not going to do my best work. Now, those could be things that you can kind of communicate maybe after the interview process and say, cool, now that I got this job, I do have some concerns about like certain customers that I would like to not be a part of their project. In some cases, though, you don't have that choice. Especially as an entry level dev, you're probably not going to have the power to say, like, I will not work for this client or that client. Unless there's like a drastic, there has been a problem, on site or something with that customer to where they're going to say, okay, well, you're not ever going to work for that kind of customer again or that client. But as an entry level dev, you're probably not going to have that kind of power to say which kinds of clients and so on that you want to go work for. So those would be things to kind of keep in mind there. So you have to do the research. Like, this is why you have to do homework on a company before you just blindly apply for a job, because you have to find out these things. Maybe on paper, like, all this looks really great, but once I start doing networking and I talk to some other developers that work for Brooksource, and they're like, dude, you don't want to work here. Like, this is actually really awful. Like, they work us 90 hours a week. It's like, well, the job post didn't say anything about that. It didn't say anything about high pressure and deadlines and things like that, but it's a consultancy firm. They're going to have deadlines. Staffing firms like this, for example, they're going to charge the customer up to 2.5 times what they're paying me. So we already looked at the hourly rate. It was like $60 to $75. So we're looking at approximately 120 to 140K per year for the senior Python role. They're going to be charging their client probably closer to 300K to 350K for my time, for whatever time window I'm working on their project. So if I'm working there for 6 months, they're billing them probably 150 to 200K for my time for a 6-month project, even though I'm only going to get like a small portion of that, because that's how you make your money as a business. You just drastically overcharge for that kind of stuff. And so keep that in mind. If you're going to go work for a staffing company or like a staff augmentation company like this, they're charging the client way more money than they're paying you. But then the client is going to look at me and go, we're paying how much money for this person and their experience? Like, they better be on the ball. They better have answers. And that's why these kinds of jobs don't necessarily play out well for entry-level devs, because there is a lot of pressure to meet those deadlines and so on. So again, you got to do that research. You got to know what you're getting into before you ever apply for that job. At the very least, I could apply for this job, go get an interview, and just to find out, like, how does Brooksource do a tech interview? Like, what would that be like? I'm not going to go apply for a job because I have a job. But if you're new in tech, just keep in mind, your cover letter is going to be quite different. Once you have experience, then you're going to start to relay that experience on here. So for somebody brand new, so let's use Ted Aruski. I'm going to use you as an example. I hope that's okay. Ted's going through Turing. Ted's probably getting close to graduation pretty soon. Are you in mod 3 now, Ted? Or mod 4? Drop that in chat for me. But for Ted has a background before coming to Turing. Turing's a 7-month program. They're learning Ruby on Rails, but no professional development experience. So in the second paragraph, I would advise, like, if I were coaching Ted on writing this cover letter, this first paragraph is going to talk a little bit about the other life experience and the other work experience you have that you're bringing to the team. You're still going to mention this is the role. This is something like to kind of hook you into like wanting to call me. Oh, you're in mod 2 still. Cool. So you're learning all about Rails and web dev and the whole HTTP life cycle and all that stuff. Good times. I really enjoyed teaching mod 2. But this second paragraph then is going to be about the projects that you've built at your school. So whether it's Turing or, General Assembly or like wherever you're coming from, you're going to talk about those projects that are related to the kinds of work that they're looking for. Now, this specific role is a Python role. And if Ted were applying for this job, well, Ted's not going to have Python experience and Ted's not going to have Django experience. But Ted is going to have an MVC-based web framework in Rails and learning Ruby. Ruby is very similar to Python. And so this second paragraph is going to be written like, I'm a Ruby on Rails developer, and I've learned some similarities between Ruby and Python and Rails and Django, and I'm going to be able to transition that knowledge By the time you get out of Turing, for example, you'll be building a couple of custom projects where you can go explore some other technologies, and you can say, I did one small project in Python, or I did a small project using Django, and so I understand the intricacies and how to test and how to connect to databases and all this kind of stuff in an alternate language, and I was able to do that in 2 weeks. Like to get up to speed on another language and build a project in that other language in only 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, however long you're going to spend on that in Mod 4. And so you're already selling in the cover letter. It's like, don't sweat the fact that I don't have Python experience. I've got Ruby experience. That's close enough. I'm going to transition this stuff in no time. Like you can still hire me. I'm still going to be good at this. I'm going to like transfer all this knowledge. And then again, that third paragraph is just why you're both headed in the same direction. You got to talk about like why it's going to be a great fit and a great partnership, and then end it with that hard sell of like, call me. Not call me maybe, call me. That's how you want to close a cover letter. Just say like, I'm actively interviewing. You don't want to miss out on this. Like you don't want to sound cocky about it, but you do want to like let them know like I'm actively interviewing. And so if you want to reach me, you can reach me in the afternoons. So if you're currently in school and you're working on a cover letter, let them know, like, when can they reach you? If your classes are mostly in the afternoon, they can call you in the morning. Or if you're doing classes in the morning, they can call you in the afternoon. Or if you're able to take a phone call any time of day, just say, you can reach me anytime on the phone. But make it a small enough window that it kind of triggers that feeling of missing out, because that's what's going to get them really interested in wanting to call you in the first place. You want them to feel like they're going to miss out if they don't call you. Cool. Yeah, so that's my cover letter. So hopefully that helped. Again, I'm not actually applying for this job. It was just kind of an exercise of like, let's go find a random job and talk about how I would grab key elements out of here that are important to me and put that in the cover letter. Now, one question or one thing that I talk about on techinterview.guide in the documentation that I write up there is how the cover letter and the resume kind of tie together. If you're going to go write a summary on your resume, which is totally okay to do, if you've got the time or if you have the space available on the page that you want to add a summary or a little about me or something on the resume, here's what I recommend. We've got a 3-paragraph cover letter. Summarize each of these paragraphs into one sentence. Those 3 sentences now become your about me on your resume, or the summary on your resume. So you're going to summarize this cover letter. You're going to condense it down into 3 sentences, and you're going to put that on your resume. Because now when they look at the cover letter and they look at the resume, they're like, oh yeah, these things are like totally partnered together. These things belong together. And they've completely customized this for us and our company. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for people that are willing to spend that kind of time. They want to know that you're willing to invest your time in them, and then they're more likely to invest their time in you. But if you're just kind of shotgunning a generic cover letter out there, like, hey, my name's Ted, I'm a Rails developer, and I'm looking for a paycheck, that's basically what that cover letter is going to read like, is you're just shotgunning that out, and they know that, you're not necessarily specifically interested in them as a company. You're just looking for a job. That's not necessarily like a fully bad thing. There are companies out there who are looking just to hire, like, we need to hire as many people as possible. But I think it's important that you do show that you're willing to take the time to like write out that cover letter. And again, the first one always takes the longest. The second one, you're going to have a template now. You can kind of follow this a little bit. See if I can find this without, github.com, Cassidy. No, it's 2 S's. Yeah, Cassidy Williams. Cassidy's awesome. If you ever get a chance to grab her on her live stream, she's really, really awesome to chat with on her live stream. But she has this whole repo called Getting a Gig, and she's got a whole section here on cover letter. And hey, look at that. Cassidy has actually given out a template as well. Now, her template is much smaller, but it's basically a fill in the blank kind of thing. But again, notice it's short. It doesn't have to be like my full life story. They're not looking for your life story when they're reading a cover letter. They just want to know, do you meet the criteria? How are you like really grabbing my attention for me to want to call you? Cool. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's Cassidoo, Cassiddoo. But yeah, check out Cassidy's Twitch. I think it's just twitch.tv/Cassidoo, spelled out the same way up here. So definitely check out Cassidy's live stream. She does really, really good stuff, and she's all about community and like helping people out too. Cool. So let's go back to chat. Do you feel there's a much different approach for university students nearing graduation and applying versus freshly graduated boot camp students? I feel my buddy who's a senior year in university isn't able to advocate for much project work and is forced to go through the internship avenue. Doesn't know much about Git or projects outside of academics, but has a stellar GPA. Some companies don't give a rip about GPA, but I agree. And that's why when I taught at Turing, and you know, I've been mentoring, so I mentored for Turing for 3 years. I taught there for 4. And over that 7 years, I gave out a lot of the same advice, that you are not necessarily competing directly against CS students because they're being equipped for a very different kind of job than you are. They are going to be the ones inventing the next programming language, the next framework, the next database. You're coming out of these boot camps knowing how to tie all these pieces together and make really amazing projects out of them. When I'm hiring somebody to come work at my company, I'm not hiring you to build a programming language. I'm hiring you to build an application, and you're going to have to piece all these things together. And so you may be an expert at a language, and you may be expert at like design patterns and optimization patterns, and have a really deep understanding of what's going on under the hood, like what's the CPU actually doing and making sure you're using memory effectively and efficiently and all that kind of stuff. You're going to be amazing at that if you got a CS background. But if you're coming out of like a boot camp or, you know, a 7-month program like Turing, you are equipped to build full-blown applications, start to finish, like literally full stack apps. You're learning how to use the database. You're learning how to use the programming language. You're learning how to like build all these things and use a framework to like scaffold all this stuff together. So you are equipped for a very different kind of role than they are. That's why I get so aggravated when I see job posts that say you must have a CS degree for this JavaScript job. It's like, why? You don't need a CS degree to like go write JavaScript. You can. Will it help? Yes. Do you have to have it? No, absolutely you don't. You absolutely do not need a CS degree for most entry-level roles. Now, as you progress through your career, you're going to need that deeper understanding of efficient memory use and efficient like call stack optimizations and things like that. And some of that you'll learn on the job. And if you can take some classes on the side, that would be ideal as well. And you can like, you know, go watch, you know, CS50 on YouTube for free in your spare time if you really want to like start kind of kicking that off. But you don't need a CS degree for this stuff. You are equipped for a very different kind of role. Would I mind posting it in the chat? Oh, Cassidy's thing? Yeah, I will absolutely put that in the Twitch chat. And I'll add it in the YouTube description later on. So like and subscribe. I'm always really bad at telling people to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitch. But yeah, if you're live on Twitch right now, give me a follow. You don't have to subscribe because I'm not doing this to make the money with the subscriptions by any means. But yeah, absolutely, give me a follow and tell your friends. I'm here to help people out. That's what I'm all about. And as much as possible, I have people on the stream to give us their perspectives as well. So it's not just me. I don't want it to be just some other white guy, you know, giving perspective out there. I mean, for streams like this, I am, because I didn't have somebody else here, like on the call, you know, helping me out. But like next week, I'm gonna have a whole panel. Sunday soon, I hope to have somebody actually do a bunch of resume reviews. Hey, Tyson J. I'm gonna guess that that's Tyson J or TYS New Jersey. But thanks for the follow, appreciate it. But yeah, I love having other people on the stream that help give us their perspective as well, especially on resume reviews, and just having that banter back and forth of like why we disagree on why things need to be the way they are. And the big thing with resumes, for example, and it can be the same way with cover letters, is like an HR person could look at this and like drool and be like, oh, this person's going to be amazing. And an engineering manager is going to look at the cover letter and go, this is garbage. I'm not going to call this person. And like, it's really hard to please everybody. And so you have to, there are times and ways to be a little bit generic in the cover letter and the resume to where you're trying to please everybody, because it's not like you can upload, well, if you're an HR, here's my HR resume, and if you're in engineering, here's my engineering resume and cover letter. So you kind of have to write them with like all of the people in mind that are going to take a look at it. Plus you got to hit all the keywords for like applicant tracking systems and so on. it's a lot to take into consideration. But the more human you can be in the cover letter, the better. When I think of the split between cover letters and resumes, and this is kind of going back to the very first stream I did when I had Jonah on the show. Love Jonah, he's a great guy. Go check out the Jonah show on Twitch as well. But he and I were bantering back and forth on like how playful should you be, and like what kinds of like fun skills and fun facts do you tell me about you on the resume. It's like, all I want to see on the resume is, are you qualified for the job that I'm hiring for? Maybe I'm a little bit more narrow-minded. Jonan is of the other camp where he's like, no, I love seeing fun stuff on a resume. Like, it's okay to put that kind of stuff on a resume. So who do you believe? Who do you listen to? Well, like a lot of other things in life, the more perspectives you hear, the more you're going to define your own perspective and decide on how you want to build your resume and how you want to build your cover letter. That's why I started the stream tonight with that little saying that said, opinions are like armpits. Everybody's generally got a couple, and some of them stink. So you don't have to just listen to me. You don't just have to listen to Jonan. You don't just have to listen to Cassidy. You don't have to just listen to any one person. Listen to all of us, and then make up your own mind about how you want to do it. This is how I like to write a cover letter. Hope this is helpful for you. I'm here every Sunday, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. You look forward to being critiqued. Cool. If you have not yet sent me a resume, you can do a bang resume in the Twitch chat, and it'll give you instructions on how to submit a resume for me. If you got here through techinterview.guide/streaming, there's a form at the bottom of that page, to submit a resume. And I've actually got a handful of them queued up. I'm waiting on someone that I worked with at SendGrid in HR. She's amazing. Her name's Margot. Looking forward to having her on the stream at some point. And we're just going to go through a bunch of resumes, just real quick style. Like, what does she look for as an HR recruiter, screener, versus what I would look for as an engineering manager? And we're going to take a look at, like, what do you like about it? What do I like about it? What do we not like about it? To kind of highlight, like, this is how different people in an organization are going to look at the exact same resume and make an opinion on, should I call this person or not? Where the cover letter is meant to kind of humanize you a little bit more, which is why I say in the cover letter, we can not be playful with the words, but we can show our human side, where the resume is just facts. The resume, to me, my opinion, a resume is just a list of facts about why you were qualified for that job, where the cover letter is like the human introduction to who you are and why I should call you to talk about that resume in the first place. So that's my thought process on the difference between those. But yeah, awesome seeing everybody in chat. If you have other questions, now's the time. Drop them in chat. Otherwise, we're going to start to wrap up because we kind of went a little over. But hopefully this process is a little bit helpful. So again, 3-paragraph kind of thing. You can kind of like skip back and grab those. I'll outline them in the YouTube description as well. So they'll be in the YouTube description about like what those things are and kind of how to lay that out. But yeah, if there's other commentary, other questions, anything about cover letters, things like that I can answer, let's do that before we take off for the night. And then let's see, is there anybody we can go raid? All the people that I would normally want to follow on Twitch to go raid are all offline. So there's nobody really to raid right now. That's disappointing. If you have a suggestion of who to go raid on Twitch, we can go raid somebody. Let's go see when Rob is around tonight. Won't know until the 30-second ad finishes playing. But yeah, also, so I know I specifically mentioned on the Tech Interview Guide /streaming to submit a resume. If you want me to critique a cover letter, I'm happy to do that too. There's a spot on the forum where you can like tell me a little bit about you. If you want a critique of a cover letter, give me the resume and a cover letter as like a single PDF file, or submit the form twice, once for the resume, once for the cover letter. But also give me a link to the job post as well. So I can take a look at the job post and I can take a look at the cover letter and look at your resume and see like how well I think you wrote that stuff up. And I'll try to play the role of engineering manager, looking through all this stuff. Cool. Nothing else going on in chat. SK Sam, thanks for the kudos on there. Appreciate that. All right, we'll wrap up for the night. Yeah, good luck with the job applications. If you have other questions, you can find all my contact info at techinterview.guide. In chat, if you do a bang LinkedIn, there's my LinkedIn contact info. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm also on the YouTubes. Come on, Own 3D. It's being a pain. Let's try that again. YouTube. All right, so there's my Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter if you want. I don't really have too much to say on Twitter other than, hey, I'm getting ready to go live on stream. But follow me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help out. If there are questions that you'd like to ask and you don't want to be on live chat, send them to me on LinkedIn. I'll address them privately. And then there's my YouTube channel. It's just Ian Douglas on YouTube. I've got all of the previous recordings on there. I've also taken all the Q&A videos and I've split them up, and I'm gradually releasing them, like one every day, Monday to Friday. Turns out YouTube doesn't like it when you dump a whole bunch of videos at the same time. And so I'm gradually like releasing those day by day. But these streams are always going to, I'm going to try and get those up like live as soon as the recording's done. So I'll go ahead and upload this, and I'll get the descriptions written out with kind of the format of like the 3-paragraph kind of thing. And I'll drop links for like Cassidy and Joan and Show and all that kind of stuff, because they're all awesome people and you need to pay attention to them too. Cool. Have a good night, everybody. And we'll be in touch, and we'll see you on Sunday for a stream. Take care.